Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. I do apologize for misspelling open mic. I didn't put a space between open and mic when I was preparing for the show, so apologies. But I hope you guys will bear with me. And again, today is Women in Wellness Wednesday, and it is open mic. So if anybody out there would like to be a part of today's broadcast, just let me know. You can email me at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com, or you can send me a comment in the comment section here on the show. And just let me know you want me to send you the link. The easiest way is if you're on X, and I can send you a link to the show that way. So, again, thank you so much for joining me here. And let's get into today's broadcast with our Kids Corner.
Exploring the world around him. One sunny day, he found a big, juicy watermelon. Andy wanted to bring it back to his ant friends, but it was too heavy for him. He called for help, and a wise old ant named Oliver came to his aid. Oliver said, "Andy, even small creatures can achieve big things when they work together. Let's gather our friends." Andy and Oliver called all the other ants. They formed a line and pushed the watermelon together. It was hard work, but they didn't give up. They moved the watermelon bit by bit, helping each other along the way. Finally, they reached their anthill with the watermelon. The ants celebrated and shared the delicious fruit. They realized that by working together, they could do anything. From that day on, the ants always worked as a team. And so, the little ant named Andy taught his friends the importance of unity. They learned that even the smallest creatures can achieve big things when they help and support each other.
Yeah, so just remembering that help in supporting one another. And good morning, Candace Eddings. She says, Grand Rising founder, Grand Rising to you as well. And so from there, let's get into our prayer. And we are praying the prayer of Jabez this morning. And so, God, we are praying that you bless us with more than we need so that we can be a blessing to others, God. And God, we're also praying for you to give us influence so that we can make a difference. And God, please make us aware of your presence. And God, protect us from every attack of the devil. And I will just end this with reading First Chronicles 4:10. Jabez cried out to God, to the God of Israel, "Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory. Let your hand be with me and keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain." And God granted his request. So just remember, God wants to grant our request. He wants to move in our lives in a powerful way. But the question is, are we going to ask him to do that for us? Are we going to humble ourselves and say, I need your help right now? I know you want to bless me, and I want you to bless me. And God wants to bless us. So I just hopefully that has inspired you guys for this morning and encouraged you, because I know there's a lot going on. And every day just seems like we're living in dog years, right? It's like, oh my gosh, it's Wednesday. It feels like June and it's just now January. I mean, things are moving at a very, very rapid pace politically, just within our communities. So, you know, just stay prayerful. And I wanted to start out today's show with giving a shout out to someone who hasn't been on the show yet. I'm hoping to have her on and interview her, but her name is Pamela Denise Long, Dr. Pamela Denise Long, properly. And she is running for U.S. Senate in the state of Illinois. And I know that we're always talking about representation and who's out there, fighting for us. Well, she wants to be, you know, elected to represent not just the state of Illinois, but Black American Negroes. It's kind of redundant. I should say American Negroes, um, that, you know, support this country. But for the most part, she wants to make sure that the harms that have happened, that there is some restoration. And also for all Americans, just making sure that we are on track to maintain our republic. And so she's definitely someone who I want you guys to support. So let me just share her video.
I'm Pamela Denise Long, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate to serve all of Illinois, from small towns to city streets. I'll fight for safer communities, secure borders now, and for years to come. Lower taxes, strong schools, and your freedom to speak and worship. Let's bring honor and solutions back to Washington. I'm Pamela Denise Long, candidate for U.S. Senate. I approve and authorize this message. Paid for by Long for Senate 2026.
Yeah, so this year, and the biggest thing that she really does need, like all candidates, is she needs financial support. So definitely make sure that you are donating to her campaign. And here is her website. It's longforsenate2026.com. That's longforsenate2026.com. And on here, there's ways for you to volunteer. She's got FAQs and issues where she's talking about economic growth, parental rights, immigration, and border security, safety and criminal justice, strong men and boys, health and well being, dignified living conditions, lineage based investment. So she is definitely someone who wants to get the job done and ensure that all Americans are safe, right? And press, and you can also get gear and merch. And hey, the green button. Let's make sure that we donate, because the biggest problem I think that we have is like, yes, we want better candidates. Yes, but it takes money to run for Senate. You cannot run for Senate, you know, on $20. You need more like, you know, 2 million is great, but I think she could do it with half a million. I think 500,000 is respectable and reasonable for any candidate. Um, in my opinion, I don't think candidates should be able to have to raise, I should say, not raise, but have to raise over $500,000 to run in this day and age. But it's interesting because politics has become more of a money pit, in the sense that it's people can make more money off of politics, as opposed to when I started in media, they used to call it political season, and the spots, or the 30-60 second commercials that you see, they were at half of the rate of regular commercials, because they were political, and you couldn't run political campaign commercials outside of the window of the campaigning season, right? But then they changed it because they realized, they're like, wait a minute, there's actually money to be made here in politics. We can charge them the same rate or even more, right? To run these commercials. And that's when the switch and the change happened. I want to say it was around 98 or 99 that I saw the transition happen, where political season, it just became a free for all. There was no more political season. It was just like, oh, we're just going to run these spots all the time. Right? We're just going to run everything, whatever. I was like, wow. Okay, so this is what we're doing. And it's made it to where people really don't like politics, in the sense of everything's political. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it with my family, you know. And I'm like, wow, because of that transition. Because, like I said before, you had a short window if you were a candidate to run your actual campaign commercials. And even if you were a super PAC or a political action committee, you could only run your commercials within a certain time frame of the year or months. You couldn't run them like they do now. They're just run all the time. It doesn't matter. And especially if you're streaming, right? I'm sure you guys have noticed, you'll see different political attack ads, or positive ads, or just political action committees. They may say, you may not know about this bill. They're always politicking. on the airwaves. So, maybe that's something we can look to change. Maybe that's something we can ask her about, like, hey, if you get in, can you fix this? Right? And, and voting so that, you don't get to vote a raise for yourself. Or how about, I think, and this one's on the table right now, the whole insider trading thing. They're trying to get that stopped. There are a lot of things within the legislative body that actually do need to be course corrected, in my opinion. And so, Dr. Pamela Denise Long, I think she is an individual that can definitely um, take up that mantle, take up that charge, but she needs your help and support. So make sure that you go to longforsenate2026.com, and that is longforsenate2026.com. And
I'm
with that,
Pamela Denise Long,
oops,
Republican candidate.
sorry, you guys. Went right into a commercial. I was like, wait a minute. I was not trying to do that. Okay, so now we are going to get into some news. Oh my goodness. Yesterday was a big news day, and we're going to cover some of that, but we're going to start right now with President Trump actually having a conversation with Senator Warren. I thought this was very interesting.
For a path forward that can push them to victory come midterms in 2026. Elizabeth Warren wants a big say in her party's future, issuing a sharp message to fellow Democrats when she said this on Monday.
In the long run, to build a strong Democratic Party with a sturdy big tent, it is not enough simply to attack Trump. Democrats need to earn trust, long-term, durable trust across the electorate. Trust that we actually understand what's broken, and trust that we have the courage to fix it, even when that means taking on the wealthy and the well-connected.
Now I got to pause it right there, because you want to go back to, even if that means go against the wealthy and the well-connected. You are the wealthy and the well-connected, ma'am. What are we talking about? Seriously? Should we look up your net worth? I don't think you want us to look up your net worth. You know what? Let's look up her net worth. Just because I'm curious, right? Oop, that's not what I wanted. I misspelled it. Okay. Let's try this. The wealthy and the well-connected. Now, I do agree with what she's saying. You can't just run around attacking Trump and that be all, as far as Democrats. But here's the thing. The reason why Democrats have lost the trust with the American public is because you are in the tank for people that are here illegally. Nobody's ever going to trust you again. Like, you have nuked the ground. You literally have Democrats running around blaming federal agents, calling the Gestapo. What is wrong with you? And you are the party who's doing this. You are caping to say that men can be in women's sports and in all women's spaces, while at the same time saying we love and protect women. No, you're not. What is wrong with you? And you want people to trust you? Okay. All right. Let's look at her net worth. Now, oops, let me remove this really quick. I have to do it safely, you guys. Or videos will start playing in the middle of the thing. Like, oh, okay. So her net worth, estimated as of 2026, can range between $7 million and $12 million. Now, this is a rich person. This is not a wealthy person, because wealthy people are like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, like they have perpetual money. You know what I'm saying? Like $12 million is like 12 cents to them. I'm just saying. Okay, you heard her. She says, we have to make sure, funny to me, that we're dealing with the, The wealthy and the well-connected. You are the wealthy and the well-connected. Stop that. But that's spoken true words from a socialist because that's what you do. See, the socialists at the top are fine because they have money, they have resources, they're well-connected. But the socialists at the bottom, they suffer because they have to keep the wealthy people at the top wealthy. No one trusts the Democratic Party because you hate human beings. And I'm just going to say it outright and be truthful. You hate humanity. And some people see it as demonic because it is. You do not want families being together. You do not want fathers in the home because welfare still exists. And the way it does exist is it does still say that they don't want fathers in the home. But on top of that, you've got illegal immigration that you're caping for where you want to keep those families intact and give them our resources and money that are our tax dollars. You're okay with fraud because you're not talking about tackling or handling any of that. You are actually perpetuating it. Miss Warren, Representative Warren, Senator Warren, let's lean in. You are the wealthy and the well-connected. You are the very people that you're trying to seek to take out. You're weird. Stop that. The problem with the Democratic Party is they've lost their way. There's so much ideology within your party that it's no longer a Democratic Party. It is a party of socialists and communists. And it's how you move that people know that you are socialists and communists, and we have a republic that we are fighting to keep. We don't want to be like Cuba. We don't want to be like Puerto Rico. We do not want to be like Venezuela. But we will be if individuals like you remain in office. So I think she's in Connecticut. Is she in Connecticut? I got to figure that out. Where she's at. But by any means, we need to get her out of office. So if anybody is in the area that she's in, it's time for her to go. Now, here's some of the key sources of her wealth. Retirement and investment accounts, right? She's got TIA, CREF funds, Vanguard index funds, often the largest portion, with some accounts valued up to $5 million. She's got real estate. So her and her husband own Cambridge, Massachusetts home since 1995. It's valued at about $4 to $5 million. And they also have a condo in Washington. She's got book royalties from for numerous book and economic bankruptcy and politics. She has earned millions over the years from bestsellers like A Fighting Chance and Persist. Combined income in recent years, her and her husband, who is a Harvard law professor, have reported earnings at around $900,000 to $1 million annually. And this is including her salary of $174,000, her pension and earnings. Yeah. So the estimates are approximate, and these are under her congressional disclosures. Now, some claim that there are much higher figures, maybe around 60 million, circulating online, but they're not supported by credible sources of her public filings, right? Her wealth places her in the upper range among senators, but far below the wealthiest members of Congress. So she's not one of the wealthiest, but she's not broke either. You're making $174,000 a year, but you may have a net, you might have a net worth of 7 to 12 million. Now, we can say 5 of that is our house. Okay, cool. That's an asset. That's your house. Got it. Where's the rest of it coming from? I'm just saying, your husband's a professor at a college. Y'all rolling like that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just so suspect and questionable. But here we are. All right, let's finish. I'm gonna take it back a little bit.
How much?
Sorry, wrong video. We're gonna get into that one next. Let's get this.
The attention of the two guys with me now, and someone else as well.
Taking on the wealthy and the well-connected.
So that got the attention.
Trust that we actually understand what's broken and trust that we have the courage to fix it, even when that means taking on the wealthy and the well-connected.
So that got the attention of the two guys with me now and someone else as well. Faz Shakir, senior advisor to Bernie Sanders, and Mark Penn, Stagwell, CEO and former Clinton advisor. Gentlemen, good day to both of you. So apparently after she made that speech, the president called her. And I haven't heard much from him, but I heard from her. Put it on screen. She said, this morning, I gave a speech noting how Donald Trump is driving up costs for families, sowing terror and chaos in our communities, and abusing his power to prosecute anyone who criticizes him. After my speech, the president called me, and I delivered the same message on affordability to him directly. Faz, do we have a meeting of the minds here?
You know, props to the president and his team. I mean, it's good that they work hard and call everybody, and that's nice. And I would like to see some actions associated with it. So I think Elizabeth Warren is right that the greatest problem of our time is that in the richest country in the world, we have great wealth and income inequality, and the poor are getting poorer. We've cut Medicaid from them. We've cut housing assistance from them. We've cut the ACA subsidies from them. We've made AI come for their jobs. The question is...
Okay, stop it. I'm sorry, I keep stopping this video, but now this is a Bernie Sanders person. Again, you're a socialist. And you're like, you're cutting this, you're cutting that. No. First of all, they're cutting the fraud. Yes, I know it's on Fox. I get it. But they're at least being interviewed. I'm just trying to get to the point of the fact they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. You keep talking about affordability. But hey, we got to remember, under the previous administration, you guys told people to throw milk in the ground. You told people to destroy their crops and not deliver food to people. You told people to kill millions of chickens because you said they might possibly have this when they didn't. You destroyed, okay, the system that we had in place to move food, to move freely in this country. You basically went to war with the people over a virus. And now here we are. Now you want to talk about affordability. You caused a problem, and now you want to bring in a solution worse than the problem that it's going to solve. It, to me, is very disheartening for a senator like Warren to come out to say what she said, because it's lies. Sorry, she's horrible. Because all you're doing is lying to the people. What are you going to put in place, Warren? Huh? Because you've got to root out the fraud first to make sure that people that actually do need these resources are getting them. And you need to get people off of the soil who shouldn't be here, so they're not taking up the resources because they haven't paid any taxes. Why aren't these people coming here to work? They're not coming here to work. They're coming here to be your new voting bloc. Let's just tell the truth. Let's just be honest. Let's just be honest.
Can we put solutions on the table that improve the lives of these working class people? And every day, I think there's opportunities. You see a Tyson plant closure in Lexington, Nebraska right now, 5% of American beef production going away. Instead of going after Greenland and running Greenland, how about you go and run a Tyson's plant and save those jobs?
Well, we can put that on the list as well again. Well, we'll add it to it. Mark, you know the president well. He likes to talk to people. It doesn't surprise.
Now you want to talk about the Tyson plant? Oh yeah, that same Tyson plant that everybody was like, oh my gosh, I think we have a virus. I think we can't deliver this. And you killed millions of chickens and you disrupted the food supply chain. Now you want to be upset about it? Oh, are these the same chickens that are now maybe injected with mRNA? Do we know? Do we not know? Aren't these the same chickens that have all kinds of antibiotics and weird things in our food supply? Yeah. HHS, they're working on the food supply. But if you really want to get down to it, stop lying to the American people. It's really crazy.
Surprised me at all that he picked up the phone yesterday. Are you surprised?
I'm somewhat surprised that he picked up the phone. But, you know, when you're a Republican and you want to get your numbers higher, you need some Democrats. And when you're a Democrat, you need some Republicans. So he's got a proposal to maybe cap credit card interest rates. And it is possible that he and Warren would come to an agreement on this proposal. and get it into law. So I think from that perspective, that call made a lot of sense, because if the president gets the credit card interest rate cap under, his watch, that's a pretty good accomplishment that a lot of Democrats would like.
Mark, we've heard a lot of ideas coming out of the White House. I don't know what's going to stick. Is this the one that does stick, or is there something else out there that we need to pay attention to?
Well, look, I think he's going to work on housing, interest rates, gas prices, and credit card. And I think he is, after all, the populist. He has reinvented the Republican Party as a populist. So in many ways, I think you're going to see some proposals like this that bring affordability back, because that is a battleground that the Democrats have successfully opened up.
A lot of people have jumped on that. Another topic here, if I could. We got 10 months for the midterms, and that's not going to stop us talking about it right now. Faz, we found that 45% of Americans now identify as a political independent. Where'd that come from?
I think there's disillusionment with whether people in government, whether you're Democrat or Republican, know your life. Are they associated with you? And if they aren't, they're moving to independence, right? They're saying, yeah, I don't think you understand what is going on in my life. To Mark's point real quick, there's great opportunities for the president. I think not only on the credit card interest rate caps, which, by the way, Bernie Sanders, AOC, Josh Hawley have all worked together to suggest that they could do this caps. There's the large institutional investors that the president said he would like to constrain their ability to buy housing in America. That could be a bipartisan effort. He's also suggested going after the stock buybacks and the executive compensation of the defense companies. That too could be an area where I imagine a lot of bipartisan support. So I think, and Mark's right, that there's opportunities here to be populist, and I think it speaks to those political independents you're talking about.
All right, Mark, you're polling people all the time. What about these numbers, independence? I find states like North Carolina, those numbers are jacked up. But the rest of the country? Explain.
No surprise, especially with young people, that the biggest party in America can be no party, because the Democrats have moved somewhat left, the Republicans have moved somewhat right, and the people in the center are wondering what's the right party to join. I think the Republicans have made some serious gains overall as a party, but still, particularly with young people, neither party has a support of a majority of America, and that's why independents are growing.
Thanks to both of you. We'll hear some of these ideas, State of the Union, of a safe prediction, I would say. Faz, thanks for coming back. Mark Penn, nice to see you, gentlemen. Enjoy the day.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I started the USA Redemption Party. A big part of that was because I saw both parties having an ideology that did not respect, nor did it answer and support what people needed, right? And so our party doesn't carry an ideology. There are tenets to our party, which are fiscal responsibility, limiting federal government to empower local government one community at a time. That's it. We're not running around spouting talking points. We're not running around spouting an ideology. The party itself is more of a movement than it is a party, because, see, we want people to be, how should I say, servants of the people, not politicians, because that's who they are, and they need to remember who they are serving. So if you guys want to find out more about the party, check out usaredemptionparty.com. That's usaredemptionparty.com. I'm the founder of the party. I founded it because I ran for president of the United States for the 2024 cycle. Started the party in 2023. We won our first election in November of 2023 in the city of Roseland, Indiana, that sits right next door to South Bend, Indiana. Yes, that's the city where Notre Dame is, in South Bend, Indiana. So again, check us out at usaredemptionparty.com. And it's very encouraging to see that people are going more independent. I'm really grateful to see it. Now, with that, they were talking about this credit score situation that can go on. So I wanted us to check that out. And maybe that might be an area, because I want to say the Consumer Protection and Financial Bureau, that's something that Senator Warren did put in place to help the American people. She did something good, you guys. But behind that, a lot of these credit card companies, they're charging like loan shark interest rates, like 25, 29%, on different purchases and balances. And I'm like, wow. But see, a lot of that stuff happened under Nancy Pelosi. Okay. So you got Nancy Pelosi doing that, and you've got Senator Warren doing what she did to protect consumers. So are our legislatures really protecting the American public, or are they protecting the people that have donated to their campaigns and put them in office? So let's check out how this might help us.
Donald Trump has made some big changes when it comes down to credit reports and scores, especially when ending the dominance of FICO and the credit bureaus, especially when it comes down to mortgages, where there has been a removal of a minimum credit score to help get more people approved for mortgages. Now he's making another big change when it comes down to credit, and he has it slated for January 20th, 2026. Now, with this change, this would help millions of Americans to improve their credit score and be very beneficial to just about every American. But of course, there's always opposition, especially when it comes from big corporations. So in this video, we're going to break down this change that he's trying to implement and the plots of big corporations to push back against this change, because they're slated to lose a lot of money, and what you need to do to position yourself to take advantage of this change so you can see a massive increase in your credit score. And we're going to break it down in this video.
President Donald Trump says he wants to put a limit on credit card interest rates. Trump says credit card companies are ripping off the American public and is calling for a one-year cap on interest rates at 10% beginning as soon as January 20th. Now, here to break this down, editor-in-chief at Investopedia, Caleb Silver. Caleb, thanks for joining me. How might this cap affect credit card users and their banks?
Well, if that cap was at 10%, that would almost cut in half what APRs are on average for credit cards right now. They're somewhere between 19.5% and 21.5% on average. But if you have poor credit, you may be paying as much as 30%.
Now, one of the major issues that people are having with their credit scores right now is high credit card debt. And this affects their utilization, which is 30% of their credit score. Now, the reason why many people are in credit card debt because of the high inflation, especially kicking up during 2022 and on from the pandemic and a lot of stimulus being put in the system. Everything went up except for people paycheck. So in order for them to survive, they've been using their credit cards because their actual salary could not keep pace with the new cost of living. And this has had Americans rack up tons of credit card debt from no fault of their own, because they didn't cause the pandemic, but still they're fighting this high credit card debt from this high cost of living.
So that would lower the interest payments that borrowers are making on a month in, month out basis just to service their credit card debt. That could bring down costs a lot for families, especially when you consider the fact that the average credit card debt is around $7,000 per borrower right now, and the average borrower is paying somewhere between $900 and $1,100 a year in interest payments. If that's cut in half, that goes down to $500 or $600, and that's some serious savings.
Now, with this 10% cap on credit card debt, this will allow people to pay off their current credit card debt faster and allow them to have more money for savings and to put towards their cost of living. So this would be really great. And the side effect of this will actually increase their credit score, because once you pay down your credit card debt, you start to see your score go up because it improves your utilization on your credit score, and it helps people make on-time payments, which is the biggest chunk of your credit score, which is payment history, 35%. Utilization is 30%. So that's 65% of your credit score. So this will be very beneficial so people can recoup from this high cost of living.
Now, all of this comes as Americans struggle with debt. Could this also affect how many people can qualify for a credit card?
Yeah, and you could see the credit card industry not liking this news at all if this were to go through, either through executive action or through legislation. So what would they do? They would tighten lending standards, and that would push borrowers who don't have good credit, who they don't want to lend to, out to other services like buy now, pay later, or payday loans, which could be a little bit more dangerous. So
now, of course, banks and credit card companies are not happy about this, because they stand to lose some major profits. But at the end of the day, they're already making money hands over fist, especially with 29% interest rates. How are people really going to effectively get out of debt? But their plan is to push back by actually making it harder for people to get approved for credit, especially if you have bad or troubled credit. So with that, that could slow down lending for people in that category, but it can also push them to buy now, pay later types of products like Klarna and Afterpay, things like that, alternative lenders. Now, these may also trap people in debt if they cannot get bank loans. But at the same time, this can force banks to compete. Remember, banks only make money primarily off of interest. Some annual fees they make money off, but interest is their main business model. So if they have those players come in, it's going to force them to compete because they won't be able to stay in business without you. So that in the long term can be better off for Americans. But in the first 2 years, you may see a lot of people get denied for credit, especially with lower credit scores.
The credit card industry and the banking association, the big lobby that backs this industry, does not want this to happen at all. Yet this is a campaign promise that Trump made while he was on the campaign tour coming in to office this year, and he'd like this to go into place, as you said, by January 20th, a year from the inauguration.
Now, initially, you will see banks tighten it up for approvals, especially with people with bad or troubled credit, because they want to charge you more interest. Now, with the month of January, I am doing my credit kickoff, and this is every Saturday right here on YouTube at 8 p.m. Central Time. This, with my elite credit system, users like Sean has $7,000 worth of credit card debt. So this can help reduce their payments of interest to credit card debt that's currently on average of $900 a month. So if they can cap that interest rate at 10%, this they can apply to get out of that credit card debt and actually afford to live and help them maintain their credit score, because this will reduce their monthly payments and they can make their payments on time to maintain their credit. But the opposite effect initially may happen, especially with people with lower credit scores, to enable them to get bank loans. So it's important to focus on increasing your credit score. And if this goes through, to know about it, to take advantage of it, to make sure that you're really attacking your credit card debt. And if you're doing that, you're automatically going to see your score increase because your utilization will improve. So hopefully Donald Trump can get this policy pushed through and actually help Americans improve their credit score and get out of debt. So hopefully this information was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, leave it in the comment section.
Yeah, because, if anybody has a credit card, and even some of my credit cards are like 25, 29%. It's ridiculous. If you do, what is it, cash advances or on your balance. And I'm like, how are you charging more than even a payday loan? And this is the credit card, and it's legal. Lobbying. Yeah, they've got friends. They've got Elizabeth Warren. They've got those individuals. So hopefully, Elizabeth, Representative Warren, if you're listening, fix this now. The American people have just been put under so much, but it shows how in bed our Congress is, House and Senate, with large corporations. It really, this shows, if you do not lower this to 10% and cap it like forever, because will they still make a reasonable amount of money with 10%? Absolutely. And they do have, I'm not sure if they still do, they used to, but like credit cards where you can put money on the card, like, $250, $500, and it helps you to build up your credit. It's like you create credit for yourself, but you initially start by, like I said, small amounts like $250, $500. And then you build up from there. And as you build up your credit worthiness, it actually builds up your credit score, even if you have a bad credit score, right? So, I'm not a financial advisor by any means. That was just a personal experience that I had, because I did have bad credit coming out of college. You thinking, oh, I can get all this credit, and you don't know how to use it, you mismanage it, and it was a whole mess. But then I got fixed, right? I'm in a better situation than I was back then, but I do know that they had credit cards like that, and it did help to boost my credit score and help me to be more disciplined with my credit and how I spent it. So for those of you out there, definitely look into that. And I do hope that we get under 29%, because that's loan shark interest rates. And that's monthly. That's on the balance. Monthly. 29%. It's ridiculous. 10% is more reasonable. I think that's more manageable for people. But on top of all that, no one's making more money. No one's got a cost of living increase within the general public. Now, some people, like in the military and of course Congress and other governmental entities, they've gotten their cost of living increase. They've gotten what they need, or cost of living adjustment. They call it COLA. But where's everybody else? Right? What's happening with everyone else? And those are the things that need to be fixed. And I'm hoping if we can get someone like Dr. Pamela Denise Long into the Senate, those changes will actually happen. No, I live in Georgia. She lives in Illinois, but she can still help affect my life in the Senate if we can just get her there. So again, donate to her campaign. I'm going to keep, shouting that out as much as we can. Donate so we can get her in office. But with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to get into some more news of the day. Thank you so much for joining me here on Women and Wellness Wednesday. And again, if you would like to be a part of the broadcast, please send me a message on X, or you can email unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com. And we will be back right after this message. We'll see you on the other side.
A life empowered is closer than you think. We're all looking for a better way. Reimagine what's next with a new sense of exuberance. Why not power on like you mean it? Or power off blissfully? A better sleep is a better awake. You've never moved like this before. With the energy nature intended. Imagine reprogramming the way you look at the speed of science. At longevity. At exhilaration. It's next level rejuvenation. Taking your well-being from the inside out and outside in. The light within is ready to ignite. Be the light. LifeWave.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. And I forgot, it's actually 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Until next week. After next week, we will be back to 7 to 9 a.m. I'm serving at church for 21 days of prayer. And so I don't get back here until after 7 o'clock. So we're doing 7:30 to 9:30 for the next week. And thank you guys for bearing with me with the time change. And if you know, and I love 7 to 9. It works for me. But if you guys are feeling 7:30 to 9:30, let me know and we can make that adjustment. I'm okay with it. Um, so the next article that I wanted to get into, and I found this interesting. I found a video on it as well. I didn't know if you guys heard about this, but apparently one of the I want to say one of the U.S. attorneys, he resigned, and he was one of the U.S. attorneys assigned to Minnesota. So I found an article on on all sides discussing it, and it's like six of them that have stepped down over handling of Renee Good case. So at least six Department of Justice prosecutors in Minnesota have resigned amid disputes over the federal investigation into the killing of Renee Nicole Good, who was shot by an ICE officer in Minneapolis. Now, several news outlets reported the prosecutors cited concerns about pressure to investigate Good's widow and dissatisfaction with the scope of the federal probe. So, among those who resigned was Joseph H. Thompson, a U.S. attorney for Minnesota who had overseen the recent major welfare fraud investigation. Federal officials have said the ICE officer acted in self defense, while state and local officials have disputed that assessment. On Tuesday, the Justice Department stated there is clearly no basis for a criminal civil rights investigation into Good's death and has declined to share investigative material with state authorities. Now, for context, according to MS Now, which is left bias, the prosecutors' resignations come a day after leaders in the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, which investigates police shootings, among other matters, left their jobs to protest the division's non involvement in Good's death. Reuters, which is center, noted four of the DOJ Civil Rights Division lawyers were also offered early retirement by the Trump administration and had become disillusioned with the direction of the division, whose priorities had been reshaped to align with President Trump. The fatal shooting by an ICE agent, Jonathan Ross, on January 7th has intensified scrutiny of federal immigration operations and the coordination between federal and state authorities in use of force investigations. Now, this is how the media covered it. The Associated Press highlighted concerns around the federal government's review of Good's death, including officials blocking state investigators from accessing evidence. It wrote the prosecutors are the latest in an exodus of career Justice Department attorneys who've resigned or been forced out over concerns over political pressure or shifting priorities under the Trump administration. Now, Fox News, which is right, emphasized Trump's departure amid the recent investigation into widespread fraud in Minnesota administered assistant programs. It wrote Thompson did not disclose the reason for his departure or what he plans to do next, but cited other news sources who said it was due to Good's investigation. The Wall Street Journal, which is center, contextualized the departures within other recent criticism of U.S. Attorney by Trump. It also shared a poll showing 53% of voters think the shooting of Good wasn't justified, while 35% think it was. So that's really huge because, all of the welfare fraud that's going on in Minnesota right now, he was, at the head of that investigative team. Now, is the investigation still going to go on? Absolutely. He will be replaced, but to lose six of them, that's pretty big. It's not like you lost one or two, you lost six. and you have to replace these people immediately. So hopefully they'll be able to get people in there, in place, caught up to speed, and getting these investigations done. Because, what happened with this young woman, like I've said before, it was very tragic. I feel bad because she was indoctrinated to believe things that aren't true. Federal agents are federal agents. They've been doing this for over 20 years. They were even doing this under the Obama administration. So it is nothing new what they're doing. But what's happening is you've got state and local officials putting these people who have deportation orders back out in the community. It puts the community at risk. There are people in the community, we're fighting against you. No, stop that. It is not your place to go up against a federal agent. That's a crime. Okay. They need to do their job unharassed. Okay. You're harassing people doing their jobs, and it's a crime. It's actually Title 18, Section 111. You cannot interfere with their jobs. If you're following them, if you're boxing them in, if you're doing all of the things that this young woman did, she was committing federal crimes. I hate that she lost her life. I'm just really, it would be great if officers, when they're engaging with people who are unarmed, shoot at the tire of the car. I would have rather him blow out the tire of the car, right? So the car is disabled, but she'd still be alive, right? Disable the vehicle, not the person. But in any event, we're here. He was hit with that car. There are different angles that they're just not showing, and I'm going to pull some footage to show another vantage point outside of his cell phone footage that I showed you guys last week and earlier this week. It's tragic what happened to her, and I don't want to see anything happen to anybody else. Let ICE do their job. You may not like the job they're doing, and that's okay. You don't have to like it, but they need to do their job. And the way we stay safe is we don't get in their way. Okay. Now with that, I want to play a video that goes into a little bit more in depth about these prosecutors stepping down and the main prosecutor stepping down.
Everyone is wondering how much of this $18 billion was fraud. That's it's not the $1 million question. That's the $18 billion question. When I say a significant amount, I'm talking in the order of half or more, but we'll see.
A few moments later.
Continues today from the federal crackdown and deadly ICE shooting in Minnesota. That includes a major shakeup in the U.S. Attorney's Office. Several top prosecutors resigned, including the point man on fraud, Joe Thompson.
And we're back, y'all. Thank you for watching today. Go ahead and hit that like button, my people. You know that it helps us out a ton. And, of course, it helps you because it helps us keep bringing you these stories every day. Now, y'all, I do not know what's going on in Minnesota. I don't know. But what I do know is that something just does not seem right, y'all. After months and months and months of fraud disclosures, we've already enumerated all the different types of fraud that have come out. But after all of that, y'all, one of the top people, one of the top prosecutors, one of the most recognizable faces in the U.S. Department of Justice who is going after the fraudsters, he resigned today along with 5 other important prosecutors in Minnesota working these fraud cases. Yes, you heard right. I'm going to say it again. One of the top guys, one of the people we've covered here on this channel, one of the people who has told you and told me about all of the fraud in Minnesota resigned today, apparently because his office was requested or ordered to investigate the wife of the protester who was killed last week, Renee Good. I just don't know, y'all. We're going to take a look at this, y'all. I'm not going to do a long lead in. This is major breaking news. This could hurt the fraud investigations, y'all. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, y'all, you know that we are a paralegal school. If you've been watching our people since 2003, and our program comes with, if you're interested, y'all, new career. Now let's go ahead and get into the story.
Continues today from the federal crackdown and deadly ICE shooting in Minnesota. That includes a major shakeup in the U.S. Attorney's Office. Several top prosecutors resigned, including the point man on fraud, Joe Thompson. He and 5 others, including the head of the office's criminal division, Harry Jacobs, all stepped down from their post. Jonah Kaplan has been following these developments today. Jonah, this is a big deal. What have you learned?
Frank, these longtime public servants have not said why they're stepping down, but we can confirm they were asked to investigate the shooting death of Renee Good. Now, you might not know their names, but you're likely to recognize the faces of some of these prosecutors, especially Joe Thompson. He's the man at the podium here speaking, as he has several times over the last few years, as the acting U.S. attorney and the first assistant U.S. attorney. Thompson was the point man on all things fraud, but he also led the federal investigations into the assassination of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and the shooting at Annunciation Church, among many other high-profile cases. Doug Kelly, a former federal prosecutor, called this a very dark day for Minnesota.
There has been just a real tradition in Minnesota that the United States Attorney's Office maintains its independence and calls the shots based on what it believes is correct. And I think today this does tremendous harm to that tradition.
We've reached out to several of those prosecutors, and so far none of them have gotten back to us. The current U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Daniel Rosen, declined comment. Frank.
All right, thanks for the update, Jonah. Despite being under Thompson's microscope, Governor Tim Walz called this resignation a huge loss for our state. Walz wrote, "It's also the latest sign Trump is pushing nonpartisan career professionals out of the Justice Department." President Trump also took to social media today, claiming Minnesota Democrats are trying to distract from the ongoing fraud crisis. The president also claimed crime will come down after the ICE operation.
Now, the different leaders and different powers that be in Minnesota and beyond are starting to sound off on this resignation. Almost, I don't want to say they're cheering it. They're definitely lamenting it, y'all. Oh, how sad, how bad. But they seem to be gloating about it in an underhanded way, basically saying, see, I told you, the way that you are using these prosecutors is going to mess up the system. And I don't know, y'all. This just doesn't feel right.
Meanwhile, several city and state leaders responding to the news as well. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara has worked with Thompson on many cases. He said today, Joe Thompson is an institution within law enforcement, directly responsible for building and prosecuting the fraud cases now being cited to justify this moment. When you lose the leader responsible for making those cases, it signals that this isn't about prosecuting fraud. Governor Walz released a statement that read in part, Joe is a principled public servant who spent more than a decade achieving justice for Minnesotans. This is a huge loss for our state. But just last week, Walz said this.
You saw a U.S. attorney stand up, which was would have been let go by any other administration, speculating about things with no factual information. That's defamation. That's coming from the U.S. attorney.
A Walz spokesperson, though, told Fox 9 he was referring to the new U.S. attorney, Daniel Rosen, who just took office. Now, when asking the U.S. Department of Justice to respond to the resignations and specifically the alleged push to investigate Renee Good's wife and the refusal to investigate the ICE agent who shot her, a spokesperson sent this from Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. There is currently no basis for a criminal civil rights investigation.
With the U.S. Attorney's Office down 6 attorneys now, it is unclear what's next. Senator Klobuchar did say there are other very talented attorneys that remain in the Minnesota office. In the newsroom, Karen Scullin, Fox 9.
Y'all see how Tim Walz allegedly doubled back? And his political career is one of the biggest casualties of the fraud, y'all. And all of this comes just as authorities are saying that the fraud investigation may go all the way to the top being that same Tim Walz, if you know what I mean. At least that seems to be the implication that I am drawing from this news.
I've tried to reach out to people that know him very well today, and everybody is tight-lipped. They say they don't want to speak for his motivations, and until they hear from him directly, they won't say. But everybody agrees this is a big loss for this investigation and for the state of Minnesota. It comes as new allegations from an attorney who represents Amy Bach. She is the has been called the ringleader of Feeding Our Future. That's the scam, the biggest COVID fraud scam here. He alleges that these Somalis that are sitting in prison, who made millions that are sitting in prison, didn't do this alone. They had help from state officials who knew about the fraud and essentially looked the other way. And he's pointing the finger at Governor Walz and AG Ellison. Take a look. In March of 2025, Amy Bach, the founder of Feeding Our Future, the largest COVID fraud in our country's history, was convicted on wire fraud and other charges. Today, her attorney is pointing the finger at Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison, saying they need to be held accountable because they knew of this fraud because his client had sounded the alarm on others well before she was charged and convicted. He says in 2020 and 2021, Bach flagged the state and the Attorney General's office of possible fraud.
The governor's office is responsible, and his agencies did nothing about them. The Attorney General's office was invited by Feeding the Future to come to Feeding the Future and review documents, close to 100 boxes, of the operation of Feeding the Future. They declined.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, in a recent press conference, upped the ante on Minnesota lawmakers.
We follow the money, and we intend to follow it as much as we can, prosecute the individuals, no matter where they are, whether they are in the Minnesota government or they are sitting in East Africa. We will find them.
So here you have 6 top prosecutors in Minnesota's criminal division, also civil attorneys who are also apparently resigning, y'all. I want you to let me know, what do you think is really going on here? I'll be honest with you. This news came as such a surprise that I haven't totally processed it. I don't have a theory as of right now. My first thought was, they see that this might go to the top and they might be jumping ship so that they won't have to prosecute some of these big dogs in the Minnesota government. But then I thought, hold up, but prosecutors like to prosecute the big dogs. Are they really just taking a moral and principled stand, y'all? What do you think, y'all? Let me know what you draw from this. Drop a comment down below.
I mean, this is just a mess. This is a mess. 6? I could see 1, but 6? And you're the main person dealing with this fraud in Minnesota. It's just some of these things that happen. I'm not going to say it's like that book by Lemony Snicket or whatever, a series of unfortunate events. It's like, what is going on? We've got this unfortunate incident with this young woman last week. The very attorney that's dealing with the fraud in that state steps down because he's concerned about how that's going to be handled. If you're so concerned, why are you leaving? Why aren't you staying to make sure that it gets done right? Like, what are you doing? That's what's tripping me out. You knew when you took this job how the Trump administration is. It's just how it is. It's how it's rolling, right? They want some law and order. They want some people prosecuted. I'm thinking you're on the side of getting things done, and now you're stepping away. It's weird. It's weird. I will have to pull some clips maybe tomorrow or by Friday of Governor Walz testifying before Congress, because yeah, that's happening too. There's a lot of stuff happening, y'all. It's wild. It's wild. But the next few articles we're going to get into what happened with SCOTUS yesterday, because they're right now they're hearing arguments in relation to transgender. Now, you guys have heard my rants about this particular issue. And it is an issue because here's the deal. Women, we produce ovum, which are eggs. Men produce sperm. You can't just whip out and change external body parts and say, oh, now you're the other. No. And you can't just dress up like somebody and be more masculine or more feminine and say, hey, you're the other. No, you're not. And why are you doing that? Why do you hate yourself so much that you would want to mutilate yourself to be something that you can never be? A man can never be a woman can never be a man. That's it. That's it. There's no more arguments. I know everybody's like, no, there's no arguments. Anything beyond the reality is your feelings. Period. Reality is reality. Period. And we've gotten to the point in our society where people are like, no, you need to accept my mental illness as fact. I'm not accepting your mental illness as fact. And I'm going to call it what it is, and it is mental illness. Now, a lot of people might get offended by that. They may not like that, but this is what it is. I'm not doing that. I'm not going down the road of degeneracy because it's a very slippery slope. Because once you take one step and you're like, well, I guess it's not that bad, you're down the slide. And it's all degenerate from there. And you can get out, but it's a harder way to get back out. So I'm putting my line in the sand on it. Now, we're going to hear from 3 different Supreme Court justices. And then I have another video, and it's a protest that's going on, but it was very peaceful. People were very respectful, which I'm grateful for, because, it can get a little bit out of hand in certain situations. And then I have another video from a Michael Smirkhoff. I always mispronounce his name. Smirkonish. Michael Smirkonish. So if we get to his video, but if not, I'm still going to link it with the repost of this video. So the first video is going to be Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Can I question the premise that you are putting forward? Even if I agree with you that equal protection is about, is this classification justified? I think that begs the question, what is the classification? And so to the extent that you have an individual who says what is happening in this law is that it is treating someone who is transgender but who does not have, because of the medical interventions and the things that have been done, who does not have the same threat to physical competition and safety and all of the reasons that the state puts forward, that's actually a different class, says this individual. So you're not treating the class the same, and you're not, how do you respond to that? In other words, the as-applied challenge essentially redefines the class, or one could think of it as that. And so what's wrong with that, number one, and how do you square that with our holdings in Caban, which Lair later described in this way? In other words, Lair suggested that Caban was establishing that as-applied challenges of this nature do exist.
Certainly, take the second question first.
Yes.
Caban says nothing about as-applied. I know that Lair says later this was an as-applied case, but simply reading Caban, it does not say that. It simply applies intermediate.
No, I understand, but those two cases were in juxtaposition with one another,
Yes.
and Lair comes out the way it does, distinguishing Caban on the basis that it's an as-applied challenge, and we in Lair have a facial challenge, and it's basically the same facts. So if you're right, those two cases can't come out the way they do.
I don't think so, Your Honor. Again, Lair was actually briefed as a standing argument of maybe you might be able to argue that this law is overbroad, but you individually are not in the overbroad part, and therefore you don't get to challenge it. The court didn't use standing language, like express standing language in the opinion, but that is the logic of the opinion.
Mr. Hurst.
Yes.
Yeah. So those were her remarks. Now we're going to hear from Clarence Thomas.
Mr. Block?
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court, BPJ signed up for school sports because she was an 11-year-old girl starting a new middle school who wanted to meet people.
Now, this BPJV person is a born male identifying as female, but this is a young man. Okay, so when they keep saying she, this is not a she, this is a he who has a mental illness, who believes that they are a female and they are not.
make new friends, and be part of a team. West Virginia argues that to protect these opportunities for cisgender girls, it has to deny them to BPJ. But Title
And this whole cisgender situation needs to stop. I'm ready to sue for defamation or something, because maybe it's not defamation. I'm ready to sue whoever came up with these weird acronyms and trying to insert them into society. I am not a cisgendered person. Don't call me that. I'm a female. I'm a woman. Okay? That cult language, keep it within your cult and people that want to identify with that. I don't identify with that. We're going to have a big problem in this country when it comes down to linguistics. And that's one of them. So when you hear cisgender, in my opinion, it needs to be an epithet. It is a disgraceful word. It is. I'm going to classify it in the same category as the N word, hard R. That's what that is. When you refer to a biological female, somebody who is a woman, as that, it's the N word, hard R. It's offensive.
Title IX and the Equal Protection Clause protect everyone. And if the evidence shows there are no relevant physiological differences between BPJ and other girls, then there's no basis to exclude her. In thinking through the Title IX claim in particular, it's important to distinguish between how Title IX operates as a general matter and how it operates outside the context of athletics. And I'm glad that we're doing that this morning. Instead of focusing on athletics, West Virginia argues more generally that this court's reasoning in Bostock does not apply to Title IX. To distinguish Title VII from Title IX, West Virginia argues that Title IX protects groups instead of individuals and applies only when sex is the sole cause of adverse treatment. That approach takes a wrecking ball to the text of Title IX and the structure of this court's anti-discrimination precedents. It would dilute Title IX's protections for everyone, not just transgender students and not just in the context of sports. West Virginia's law treats BPJ differently from other girls on the basis of sex, and it treats her worse in a way that harms her. Outside the context of athletics, that's all BPJ would need to establish a Title IX violation. But the Javits Amendment provides extra breathing room for reasonable regulations that take into account sex-based differences in athletics to provide equal athletic opportunity for everyone. West Virginia's exclusion of BPJ does not fall within that framework. Unlike the exclusion of a cisgender boy, excluding BPJ doesn't advance any interest in ensuring overall fairness and safety. And unlike the case of a cisgender boy, excluding BPJ from the girls' teams excludes her from all athletic opportunity while stigmatizing and separating her from her peers. I welcome the court's questions.
Doesn't your claim ultimately depend on the existence of sex-segregated sports?
Yeah, no, I don't think so, Your Honor. I think this is similar to Morales-Santana, where the claim was an equal protection claim.
Well, I mean, let's say there were no Title IX requirement for sex-segregated sports.
Yeah, well, if there were no Title IX requirement, and I don't think Title IX requires sex-segregated sports.
Well, permits.
But if there were no Title IX and all the sports were co-ed, then she wouldn't be subjected to disparate treatment on the basis of sex. So I think the claim is the discrimination, and it's perfectly possible to.
So doesn't that suggest that you're a subcategory of the sex of the relevant class of female athletes? Isn't that your point?
Yes, well, for the equal protection claim.
Well, but you're not. My point is that you're challenging a category that does not exist in the statute, but is dependent upon the existence of a category in the statute that you're not challenging.
Well, I wouldn't put it that way. I would put it the way as there's a classification that we think is valid as applied to most people, but is invalid as applied to a discrete subset of those people. But I don't think the success of that equal protection claim hinges as an a priori matter on the existence of girls' teams. There are lots of ways to remedy an equal protection violation.
It's just sad where our country is And he asked a very valid question, what are we really looking at, right? What if Title IX didn't exist? And it's like, oh, well, we're just not. And it's so deceitful. And here's my thing: when you are trying to, how should I say it? When you're trying to justify something that's a lie on its face, you can't. And then reality comes back to ask you a question that says, hey, that doesn't make sense based on reality. You try to go, oh no, but reality is this. And it's like, no, it's not. Because here's the reality over here. And it's disgraceful because Title IX is supposed to protect women, biological women, and transgender women who are men, who are mentally ill. It is a mental illness. They call it gender dysphoria, but it is a mental illness. Now want to insert themselves in women's spaces. And we have Title IX. Why? Yeah. And it's like, well, why can't sports be, co-ed? Because boys are stronger than girls and they will get hurt. This is why women don't play professional football. Okay. They could be kickers. I actually do have a niece that plays football. She's really good. She's a safety. She's awesome. She is really, truly amazing. And she plays in high school. She plays at the high school level. But there's going to get to a point where she's not going to be able to physically keep up. She can't. Men are physically stronger, period. It doesn't matter how you feel. The facts are the facts. I played football growing up. Yeah. I went out for wide receiver. I'm fast enough. I can catch. Definitely run plays. Practice playing quarterback, position as well with my little brother. I can play the game. Physically, I'm not as strong as a man. So I cannot play at a level really at high school and beyond because physically I'm not as strong. And you know what I'm saying? It is what it is. Now, do they have, flag football? They do. Did they have powder puff contact football? Yes, they do. But they, I want to say flag football, that's co-ed. But I bet you one thing, the boys are probably faster and stronger than the girls. Because they are. It is what it is. I need for this whole transgender thing, I need for them to stop trying to insert themselves into women because you never really hear about women claiming to be men inserting themselves into men's areas. Find me a case on a woman who's trying to go into the men's locker room. Bueller. Because there aren't any. Because it doesn't go like that. Because those that are transgender, even if they identify as a male, they stay in the female locker room. They're not going in the male locker room. Guaranteed. Yeah. The death of logic. Okay. So now we're going to go to Samuel Alito's comments.
Issue of discrimination on the basis of transgender status. Let me just go to some basics. Do you agree that a school may have separate teams for a category of students classified as boys and a category of students classified as girls?
Yes, Your Honor.
If it does that, then is it not necessary for there to be, for equal protection purposes, if that is challenged under the Equal Protection Clause, an understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that definition? For equal protection purposes, what does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do not have a definition for the court. And we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth sex males where it doesn't make sense to do so according to the state's own interest.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means for equal protection purposes?
I think here we just know that we basically know that that they've identified pursuant to their own statute, Lindsay qualifies as a birth sex male, and she's being excluded categorically from the women's teams as the statute. So we're taking this.
Okay, this is confusing. She sat there and said, Lindsay is a birth sex male, she. Huh? Stop. That is not logical. This is a young man who has a mental illness because he believes he is a female. He is not. Male's got a penis. It's a male. Okay, young man. Now, a little because he's a little bit older. So I'll say, young man. You are a young man. You are not a female. Your body does not produce ovum. Your body produces sperm. You have a penis. You are a man, child. Okay, you are a young man. You're a man. That's it. You're not a she. It's the death of logic. And and the attorney's sitting up there like, we don't have a definition. You don't have a definition because this is all a lie. It's all a lie. And you want us to accept something that isn't true. Stop it. We're not going to be a part of your cult. The mind virus is real. It's a social contagion. It needs to stop. It's crazy. Let's continue.
Statutes definitions as we find them, and we don't dispute them. We're just trying to figure out, do they create an equal protection problem?
All right, suppose this school that has a boys, let's say, track team and a girls track team. The school has that. And a student who has the genes and the reproductive system of a male and had those at birth and has never taken puberty blockers, never taken female hormones, never had any gender altering or affirming surgery, says, nevertheless, I am a woman. That's who I am. Can the school say, no, you cannot participate on the girls' team?
Sorry, so you're just a birth sex male who has all the advantages of birth sex male hormones, and can the school bar him from the women's team? Yes, they can.
But that person, is that person not a woman in your understanding? If the person says, I sincerely believe I am a woman, I am in fact a woman. Is that person not a woman?
I would respect their self-identity in addressing the person, but in terms of the statute, I think the question is, does that person have a sex-based biological advantage that's going to make it unfair for that person to be part of the women's team? And that's the rationale for the regulation, and so that's the way we would be testing that hypothetical.
Well, the reason I'm asking has to do with discrimination on the basis of transgender status. So what you seem to be saying is, yes, it is permissible for the school to discriminate on the basis of transgender status, because if this person is a trans woman, a trans girl, and is barred from the team, from the girls' team, then that person is being subjected to differential treatment based on transgender status, right?
Well, that would be, then the question would be whether it was, the scrutiny would be satisfied. So from our perspective, that would be a transgender classification. It would get heightened scrutiny, and it may be satisfied here because of the need to have, to curtail unfair athletic advantage. That would be the analysis. We are not pressing in this case the notion, and the case does not require the court to decide whether transgender women who've gone through puberty and have not suppressed their testosterone would be able to play on a men's team. And the record here is a preliminary one where that doesn't present that question for the court.
When this does present a particular factual situation, and we have to decide that case, but looking to the broader issue that a lot of people are interested in, there are an awful lot of female athletes who are strongly opposed to participation by trans athletes in competitions with them. What do you say about them? Are they bigots? Are they deluded in thinking that they are subjected to unfair competition?
No, Your Honor, I would never call anyone that. And I think what we're saying here is that you have to, that's the reason why there is intermediate scrutiny, or even in rational review, you don't legislate based on undifferentiated fears. You base on trying to make a rational response to what is a perceived issue. I think here, although I would take issue with the notion that there was no reference to transgender individuals in the creation of this law, I really would direct the court to JA. Again, this is not about animus. I'm just saying that if you look at JA, pardon me, I need my JA 105 through 112, there are numerous references from the sponsor of the law saying the way we're going to try to protect women's sports is to not have transgender women play on the women's teams, and that was the fear that they had at the time. Again, that is not an accusation of animus. It's just a question of what was the statute doing, and then we go to the point of, does the statute survive heightened scrutiny? That would be the inquiry.
Do you think that the success of trans athletes in women's sports is proportional to the percentage of trans athletes who participate in women's sports?
I think I would direct your attention to, there's I want to make sure I have the right amicus. There's an amicus brief that talks about actually some of there are examples, obviously, of some transgender people that have participated and excelled. They actually are few and far between. You know, we have our client here who tried to make the NCAA team because of the injunction. She was too slow. She played club soccer, club running. She was even an officer in one of those clubs, just doing what you would hope a college student would do. You'll hear from my colleague about the other case. But I do think that, and there's a brief that in the amicus briefs that will share the examples of showing that's a bit overstated.
Would the analysis be different if they were more successful?
No, I think it would be, to the extent, I mean, we've already covered that transgender people are a meaningful slice of the population, but a small slice. I think the state, if there were a concern of women's sports being fully overrun by an outbreak of a huge new number of transgender people, that might be a different factual situation. In the end of the day, and we understand, that there were legislators who were concerned about that. The legislative history makes that clear here. But that wasn't the factual basis before the court. If there were actually a threat to women's participation in women's sports, that could be a different analysis, because obviously the goal of sex equality in sports is a very important goal. We don't take issue with that. We just would say that I think this is an important moment to just take a step back and say, is this law actually responding to a problem in a rational manner, or is it actually overreacting on the presumption that transgender women are categorically going to be strong athletes when that's not the case?
Okay, they are going to be strong athletes, because if a woman had the amount of testosterone, even if these individuals are getting their testosterone lowered, a woman, if she were to have that same level of testosterone in her body, she would be ejected from sports and would never be allowed to play with other women, because she would have a physical advantage of a higher level of testosterone. Our bodies, both males and females have estrogen and testosterone. Now, men have it at smaller levels. That's why they have sperm. Women have a lower level of testosterone because we have ovaries, we have ovum. But we both have both. We do. That scientifically, it is what it is. But when you have more testosterone in your body, it develops you into a male. When you have more estrogen in your body, it develops you as a female. To try and say, okay, we're going to lower the testosterone in this male so this person can compete with females, it's still going to be at a higher level than an average female, because you're a man. Why can't we just say they can't be in female sports and create their own lane for them, since everybody wants them to be here? It's weird. It's like, they're not that much of the population. They're not overrunning things. Then why are we here having a court case to shoehorn transgenders into women's spaces? Why are we here? You heard the attorney. She couldn't even explain what a male was. She couldn't explain it. She couldn't give you a definition. You can't give a definition. You're here at the Supreme Court and there's no definition of what a male is or a female. This is about lowering, lowering the standards, of mental thinking. They want us to lower our standards. If you have lowered your standards and you are like, you're okay with everybody and everything, and you're like, love is love, I'm like, okay, got it. Trust me, I have people in my life that are, transgender or claim to be transgender. I've got people in my life that live an alternative lifestyle to me. I love them. I love the person they are. I don't like the sin, but I love the person. You're making your own choices. But when you put it off on me, when you're saying, hey, you need to be in a locker room with this person who identifies as a female, but they have male biological parts and they're walking around naked saying they're a female and they're not, that's a problem. Okay. You give them their own stall, their own locker room, but you don't put them with females when they're males. We wouldn't even be here right now. You give them their own sports lane. Don't put them with females because they're men. Period. But we have to get you to accept something that is not true. Why are you fighting for that? Like I said, the attorney, she couldn't even explain what a male was or a female. She can't explain it because there's no definition for it. Yeah, there is. Look at a science book, any of them. Look at yourself. Look in the mirror. If you don't have a penis and you have a vagina, if you have a vagina, you're a woman. If you've got a penis, you're a man. It's real simple. It's real easy. It's real cut and dry. It's real cut and dry. That's it. But you want to put all the fancy words in there and all this logic. Yeah, logic is not going to die. We are still going to be logical human beings. Now, with that, I want to check out the protest that happened. And like I said, there was nothing violent. It was very peaceful from what I could see in the video. And I really do appreciate that part.
To protect all of the protections that we've had for years that are being save women's sports. Save women's sports. Save women's sports. Save women's sports.
You promise under all laws, legal and binding, under penalty of perjury, that you will not interrupt me until I am finished.
Okay, so this apparently is a man dressed up like a woman, and this man has a sign that says trans women are men. Factual.
That you'll see coming out, Leanne will be at the head of the tip of this. These young women representing their sports teams that have come from across the country to say no more. We will take it.
Okay, so the woman back here, that's Dr. Avetta King. And I want to say Angela Stanton King, she might be here somewhere. I know she was calling for people who could be in Washington, D.C. to be there.
We will not compete with boys. We do not have to be on the field, the court, or the swimming pool. We can do what's right because we have a great litigation team behind us to prove that fact is not fiction. Them in any way that you can, because they are defending freedom along. This is a collaboration of coalitions for the first time in our history. The Conservative Party has... Oh, my God. Okay, ready? I'm gonna... Hi. Okay, thank you.
That's good to know. No longer out.
Thank you so much. We're gonna pour. Where are you from?
Yeah, like I said, it was very peaceful. And I appreciate that everybody kept it really respectful.
Familia TQLM, family equality, gender liberation movement, GLAD.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of what happened there. Now, I wanted to get into McCormick's McCormick. I'm probably butchering that man's poor name. We're going to get into Michael's video and his perspective on what happened at the hearing yesterday with SCOTUS.
The Monday poll question at swercondish.com. Should transgender women and girls be allowed to compete on women's sports teams at public schools? Why are we asking this today? We're asking this today because tomorrow, that case, actually a pair of cases, get litigated, get argued in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. Amy Howe is the bomb when it comes to these matters. She is the co-founder of SCOTUS Blog and the primary reporter of SCOTUS Blog. She has already published an explainer on this pair of cases, and we've run it in the swercondish.com daily newsletter. Amy, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's always great to get to join you.
Thank you. Before we get to tomorrow's argument, can we talk about where the Supreme Court has been involved in transgender-related issues in the past? Because two come to mind, and you dealt with both of them in your recent essay, or explainer, I should say. What are the two cases they've already addressed?
Sure. So for the first one, we have to go all the way back to 2020, which was a different court. And in 2020, in a decision by Justice Neil Gorsuch, who we think of as being part of the court's conservative bloc, a 6-3 court in a case called Bostock versus Clayton County ruled that federal employment discrimination laws do protect transgender and LGBTQ employees. So that was 2020. And then in June of 2025, in a case called United States versus Scormetti, another court, a different court, held in a decision by Chief Justice John Roberts that rejected a challenge to Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care for transgender minors. So the Supreme Court, in essence, will be sort of navigating between the Scylla and Charybdis of these two cases on Tuesday.
So in the first, am I being overly simplistic when I say just as you cannot fire someone who's gay, you cannot fire someone who's trans?
That's right. This was a case involving a funeral home director named, a funeral home employee named Amy Stevens, who announced that she was transgender and she wanted to come to work dressed as a woman. The funeral home said, well, we have a dress code and you can't meet that code if you're coming to work dressed as a woman. And in essence, what Justice Gorsuch said in his opinion for the court was that the federal employment discrimination laws prohibit discrimination because of sex. And he said, you couldn't fire Amy Stevens if she were a cisgender female for coming to work dressed as a woman. And so when you fire her as a transgender woman for coming to work dressed as a woman, you're firing her because of her sex.
And Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was still with us at that time and joined in the opinion along with the Chief Justice. And as you say, it was written by Neil Gorsuch. Some interesting partners, I guess I would say, in that majority opinion.
That's right. That's right. And interestingly, in the oral arguments in December of 2024 in the Scormetti case, the Tennessee case, Justice Gorsuch, who we were all watching closely because of his decision in the Bostock case, was essentially silent, gave no clue as to how he was going to vote. And then he did join the Chief Justice who wrote for the majority in upholding Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care.
So in the workplace, SCOTUS will not allow discrimination against a trans employee. SCOTUS will, however, uphold those states that want to put limitations on what type of treatment might apply to a trans minor. That's where we are now going into tomorrow.
That's right. The Chief Justice in his decision in the Tennessee case said, we haven't said anything about whether the Bostock case applies beyond employment discrimination case. That was a law involving the interpretation of a case involving the interpretation of a federal statute. The Tennessee case involved the interpretation of the Constitution, and the court said this is not even a statute that discriminates based on sex, based on transgender identity. All it does is it draws distinctions based on age and purpose. It says that transgender minors, that minors can't have these forms of treatment, and that transgender teens can't have these forms of treatment.
Wow.
This is Parks. This is
Sorry
as
for the commercial.
BPJ, who is now in high school, but when she was in middle school, she wanted to participate in the middle school track and cross country teams. And after this law was passed, she was told that she wouldn't be able to. So she went to court challenging both the constitutionality of the law, arguing that it violates the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause, which is a clause in the 14th Amendment that guarantees, in essence, fair treatment for everyone, and also a law known as Title IX, which prohibits discrimination, among other things, based on sex in educational institutions that receive federal funding. So in both cases, the federal courts of appeals ruled in favor of the transgender athletes, challenging the laws. The states came to the Supreme Court, which agreed to weigh in, and we'll hear oral arguments on Tuesday.
But like I said, it's very confusing because the same people that are like, yeah, there's equal protection for us, you can't even define what a woman is. Ketanji Brown Jackson at her Senate hearing to be, affirmed into the Supreme Court, she said she didn't know what a woman was. So if you can't even define a woman, how are you taking over spaces for biological women? Like, do we really need to make it that plain and clear? Transgender men are not women. They are not biological women. They should not be in women's spaces. But we're playing the game of semantics. Because if they believe that they're a woman, then you have to believe that they are. Now, where does this start as a religion? And it becomes less about the law. Because now you've got to believe. Why? Yeah, that's the bigger question, in my opinion.
Each of these trans athletes was successful at the appellate level.
That's right.
Amy, why a rookie question? Why necessary for the Supreme Court to take two cases tomorrow? Can't they resolve each of these and every other challenge that's out there pending by just taking one of them?
It's an interesting question. I mean, one possibility is that the courts of appeals relied on different grounds. One court of appeals relied on the Constitution. The other one relied on the federal law, Title IX. One is a university student. One is now started as a middle school student, is now a high school student. Also, the middle school student turned high school student. She actually socially transitioned and then started puberty blockers and hormone treatments so that she's never actually gone through male puberty. And so one of the arguments that she makes that
still doesn't matter. It's not a she, it's a he, it's a male, got a penis. You still have more testosterone than a female. You're a man. It's just the logic is so sad that it's lost.
the state argues that both states argue that this is about fairness in women's sports. And she says, well, this isn't actually about fairness. This is about transgender women and girls and keeping them out of sports because I don't have an advantage because I've never gone through male puberty. So they may just wanted to have sort of all of the facts and legal issues before them so that they could settle the issue once and for all.
In lay terms, can you summarize for me the arguments on each side?
I can try.
Okay.
Under the constitutional argument, the argument is that it treats transgender athletes differently. And the states say it doesn't, these laws don't mention the word transgender at all. It may treat people differently based on their sex, in the sense that someone who was assigned male at birth can't compete on women's sports teams, but it said states have a substantial interest in ensuring that women's sports are fair and that there are biological advantages for transgender women and girls over cisgender women and girls. And so that's their constitutional argument. On the other side, the challengers say, well, of course, this was intended to single out transgender women and girls, and this isn't really about fairness, as evidenced by the fact that in the case of BPJ, the young transgender athlete. She hasn't gone through male puberty. On the side of the federal law, Title IX, the challengers say this is essentially just like Bostock. We are being treated differently than cisgender women and girls because we are transgender. And the states say that in Bostock, that was about employment, and in the workplace, sex almost never matters. But on the other hand, in sports, there are biological differences, and it does matter, and you can't just transpose Bostock full on to the case of women's sports.
I find it interesting and a bit sad, if I understand correctly, that Lindsay Hecox, the 24-year-old who is the challenger in the Idaho case, now wishes that she were not associated with the case because of pressures, social media, vitriol that gets brought to bear.
Okay, I'm going to stop the video right there, but I will attach the link of the full video so you guys can watch it. But I just wanted to have, just a little bit more insight and a different view, right? Because it's like transgender, cis women, stop. I don't like I do not like them trying to normalize cult linguistics. If you want to do that within your cult, do that amongst the people that want to participate in that, but don't put that on other people outside of your cult. Because see, somebody comes to me with the cisgender stuff, I'm gonna be like, I'm not a part of your cult. And they're gonna be like, I'm gonna be like, no, I'm not a part of your cult. And it better not happen again. They are gonna get a little bit of heat from me because I am a woman. Period. I am a woman. I know who I am, and I'm not trying to be something I'm not. Okay? And that needs to be respected. So if all this cisgender nonsense, knock it off. Nobody wants your cult linguistics to be normalized. We're not normalizing any of this. Stop it. It's a mind virus. It's a social contagion, and we're done. Okay? So everybody out there with the mind virus, I'm putting you on notice. Inoculations are happening. We're shutting it down. It's a wrap. And with that, we're going to end the broadcast today. But thank you guys for joining me here on Women and Wellness Wednesday. Tomorrow is going to be Mighty Men Thursday. And again, it's going to be open mic. So if there's any of our males out there, men, all right, men, all right, you know who you are. You know what you do. Y'all are awesome. But yeah, for the men, if you would like to participate in the broadcast and come up and share your thoughts, let me know. You can send me an email at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com and I will send you the link. Or you can send me a direct message on X. So you guys enjoy your Wednesday. Things are going to get better. Things are going to get better. They have to. I know it sometimes you wake up and you're just like, there's a lot of frustration. And I know a lot of people out there that are on the side of people that are transgender. They're frustrated too. And, here's my thing. If that's the lane you want to have that lane, that's fine. But don't force people to participate in what you're doing. No. If you were born as a male, if you were born as a female, that's how you were born. It's assigned at birth. No. You're either male or female, and that's it. The decisions and the choices that you make after that are those. Okay? And there are some people that hate themselves and they want to be something that they cannot be. And it doesn't make them happy, by the way. I've talked to some detransitioners and they're not happy people. Talked to some people that have transitioned. They're not happy people. They're very miserable. Okay? So it does come back to, why do you want to do this to yourself? We are definitely living in end times, biblically. Oh, you know what? Quickly, there are two things I wanted to get to very quickly. I'm probably just going to be able to read the headlines and the brief comments, but Bill and Hillary Clinton refused to testify in the House Epstein investigation. So former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announced Tuesday they will not comply with congressional subpoenas to testify in the House Oversight Committee's investigation of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Interesting. wow, why aren't y'all testifying? I'm like, what are we really doing? And then the Trump administration ends TPS, or temporary protected status, for Somali nationals. And I will put those links in the rebroadcast so you guys can go through those articles. And remember, check out All Sides, where you get the news from all sides, right? Whether it's left, right, or center. And I really do appreciate everything that All Sides has. They have their media bias rating and their charts that actually shows, hey, once it comes in, right? Um, it shows, far left, left of center, center, right of center, and far right. And it has the different news outlets that fall in these different categories. So you can really see where people's perspectives are. So, again, thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.